Hi, Laru. You're muted, by the way, Laru. Okay. All right. So welcome to the brown bag on PCI's mobile technology. I think a lot of people have asked, what is mobile technology and what does that mean in the bigger scope of things? And hopefully this brown bag will explain that a little bit better, or make it more confused, I'm not sure. So we'll see. All right. So we'll talk about what is PCI doing, and as well as what is mobile technology, and then there'll be a little bit debrief on ICT4D conference that Jason and I attended recently. And I'll go into a little bit detail on what ICT4D actually is, besides a bunch of letters and a number. And then where we're moving forward to, and that's the idea. So what is mobile technology? But before we can even ask about mobile technology, we need to understand what is ICT4D. Any guesses? It's pretty straightforward. Besides PEG. Teacher's pet up on here. Look at you, ding, 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 ding. So it's information, communication, technology for development. And so when we're talking about mobile technology, the mobile technology is part of a component of ICT4D. So it's essentially using ICTs in the field of socioeconomic development, international development, and human rights. So what we do, and the idea is leveraging technologies that are currently available. So if you want a fancy little definition over here, that's kind of what it looks like. So the question is, what is PCI doing? And this is a sort of a brief description of what PCI has been doing. Let's see what the chat box is. Yep, Clara, can you hear me better now? Clara, can you hear me? All right, perfect. All right, so what is PCI doing? And this is a map showing PCI's countries that we currently implementing mobile technology. So we have, in Guatemala, we're doing a school feeding program using a mobile data collection platform, Mobenzi. We're doing survey data collection in Ethiopia. We're doing a VSLA, which is a village savings and loan pilot of data collection through an app provided by the VSLA called Savix. We're actually building a custom commodity tracking platform called GPAP, and I'll explain that a little bit later. We were trying to do Ebola contact tracing, but we're also doing cash transfers, cash for work, working with telcos in Liberia. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. We use it for proposal development, and that's all using data collection. And we'll talk about data collection versus mHealth, mAg, mLearning, etc. In terms of project implementation. All right. So I'm trying to balance like all the chats and everything. And also we've done an ASHA pilot, which is the accredited social health activists there, where we're providing postpartum visits and having mobile training and audio and text messages as well as images to sort of provide a decision tree for those ASHAs working in the field, and that's kind of the pilot. And we got written up in a compendium or some journal, but that's mostly that's sort of a brief outline of what we've been doing. So a lot of what PCI does is mobile data collection in terms of mobile technology, and what that means is that traditionally data collection has been done on paper, and then this is sort of what it looks like in terms of questions. And this is from the Bangladesh DFAT proposal that we did, and these are the questions that were for all the three separate purposes: livelihoods, gender, and etc. So the idea is that you would take these surveys that are traditionally done on paper, and then you can see that they're pretty extensive, where there's matrices and things like that, where you have to select the 3 most profitable IGAs for young men, women, and then you got to decide, each person's got to select 3, and if it's other, you got to fill that in. And then what happens is that after that, you got to take this data, which is very susceptible to user error or things not filling out correctly, and then you have to input that into the system, most likely Excel, and then so that time delay as well as accuracy is definitely like diminished. So these are just examples of actual questions that we actually ask in the field and rely on a lot of paper. And then if we look at the life change indices, it's extremely large and there's a lot of paper involved. So we want to move away from that, as well as increase efficiency and decrease time it takes to collect data. So what does digital data collection actually look like? So this is actually recorded off of my phone. If I can find the mouse, here we go. So what we've done is actually taken those very same questions and then put it into ComCare, the mobile platform. And then this is what it looks like on a mobile device. This is actually off of here. And then we basically fill it in there, and then it allows you to capture GPS location, as well as give prompts for the enumerators to basically read to the people being interviewed, and then they would fill in information accordingly. And this all gets sent into a server on the cloud, and then we can export that data. And since we use it mostly Excel anyway as our database, this is very convenient. I'll show you what it actually looks like after this. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of information you can put in here. So this is actual data. This is me recording the screen while I'm putting in the data. You can see that it allows you to do skip logic, etc. So that way you minimize on the errors being used by the enumerators. So this is like livelihoods, how would you rate the probability for using a decimal band, and then gives you options, and then the user would fill that out. So, but what does that mean in terms of, so we basically replace the paper, but what we can do more with it is that we can take that information and provide a very contextual and visualize the data that we fill out. So a lot of you might recognize this building. Where is this? PCI in the parking lot. And what we can do is begin to take the data and understand that we're at PCI in California, in the United States, and then we can actually zoom to say what we saw earlier is the Bangladesh DFAP. So what now we're doing is we're going all the way to Bangladesh, and we can zoom in, and then we should be able to see the Bay of Bengal. And then we can actually overlay data such as the map of Bangladesh. And then what we'll do is that we target the 3 upazilas, and then they should pop up now.
Can you tell us what?
It's like a district. No, it's more. It's larger than a district. It's like a province. It's more like a province. And then we can actually, so all the data that we collected from 200 households was mapped onto here. And then you can see how they're spread out between these 3 separate upazilas. And then what we can do is zoom in a little closer. And this is all data that we've been able to find. And then now you can see the GPS location of every survey using the mobile device to capture the data. So we're doing surveys as well as adding georeferencing tools. And I don't know why the recording neglected to show the text, but the low quality, I just tried to save the best I can with the screen recording and free software. So we should probably buy software for screen recording. But then you can begin to map family welfare centers on top of that. So these are publicly available data that I use to map it on here. And then you can map distances, radial distances. So in this case, the larger circle is about 8 kilometers. The little one is about 3.93 kilometers. And the idea is that now we can begin to make informed decisions about how we want to tackle these specific areas. So this is something we can definitely, we've done it here. So that's pretty cool in terms of visualizing the stuff. So provide a context in terms of what we collect. So a lot of times we collect a lot of data, but we need to begin to look at what we can do with it. So yeah, so this is zooming out now. And then I can just stop this. And on top of that, we're also creating an app. So this is my app drawer on my phone. And then we're actually creating GPAT, which is Global Pathway, which is a commodity tracking, beneficiary registration follow-up, and it's mobile enabled in both online and offline environments. These are screen captures of what it looks like on the mobile device. You would log in, you would actually be able to see households, summary reports, view records, synchronize records, and this is all in development right now with NASMO in Malawi as well as Bangladesh. And we will be using it further on, ideally in the future in all our projects. And the idea is that you can do household registration, and this is what it looks like. And then we're able to have a web interface where you would log in the GPAP system and then allow you to look at all registration services, distribution, warehouse. So we can begin to look at commodity tracking as well as track from the commodity from warehouse all the way to beneficiary. And that's the idea, as well as handle like register beneficiaries and then see what they qualify for those households in terms of services that we provide, in terms of interventions and projects under the Injera program. And then you can look at household, and then these are all like data that we basically piloted, test data that we use mobile devices. I believe I did the test somewhere there, so it should pop up there. And then we can even add this geolocation aspect onto it. So now we can begin to map beneficiaries as well as warehouses and see where we're working, etc. And this is Global Pathway, which is a whole system and platform that we're developing on our own. So that's a pretty extensive project. So, but what is possible with mobile technology? Well, it's sort of like endless. If you think about how technology has developed in the last 10 years, say, from the development of the iPhone, smartphones, and mobile internet and internet penetration, as well as mobile phone penetration in developing countries. So there's mHealth happening, which is working with frontline health workers, community health workers, providing resources for them. There's education awareness, where you could call in as well and get and have questions answered about health that you might have. But those require partnerships with telecommunication companies, etc. Google or Facebook's internet.org, is that what it is also trying to tackle this next billion, as they call it, of in developing countries will become online. So you can do disease, epidemic, outbreak tracking, you can do a helpline. It's just pretty much endless. This agriculture, which is providing a lot of work is being done right now, is to provide market information to the farmers so they know what to sell, how much to sell their crops for. They can look at weather, learning, and microfinance, all these aspects built into a mobile device. And there's also mobile learning. You can learn literacy, etc., using low literacy rates. You can record audio recordings as well as video and put them on the mobile device, and people and individuals can learn on their own. This mobile monitoring evaluation, which is really big right now, and I'll talk to a little bit more on that. And there's also project implementation, which is such as mobile platform for seed fairs. A lot of times, knowing who is receiving the information. In the past, you would have a list of beneficiaries. They come to the seed fair, and then I would say, oh, ID number 5555 gets this. So now they're using barcode scanners and mobile phones to actually pull up information real time. So imagine reaching 500 people. Imagine looking through a stack of paper to find them and then making sure that they are who they are. Whereas now you can move forward into like barcodes. Like you go to a gym, you would scan in exactly the same system, and that technology is being implemented into a lot of projects across the field.
Tony?
Yes.
So
a seed fair will be such as you need to provide commodities, say seed to a list of beneficiaries that you have in the village. And in order to do that, you need to provide the actual goods, but we need to track that the services we're providing, such as seeds, where individuals will come, we would give them actual seeds as a commodity, but so that they can grow, whether or not it's for food security or for actually mostly food security, as well as diversification of different crops that we're trying to move individuals away, such as maize being less nutritional, etc. That's kind of the fair concept. So instead of giving money directly to individuals, we're giving them the means to make more money, or as well as food security. So what I'm gonna talk to now is like ICT4D and a couple of things that we saw at the ICT4D conference in Chicago, hosted by CRS. So a lot of the technology that we think is really important and relevant for us is using technology in monitoring evaluation. Because if you think about it, the goal of monitoring evaluation is to demonstrate impact. But the question right now is, how do we accurately capture impact? That is a question that we've been, I think, development organizations as well as academic institutions have been asking since the beginning and are still asking. 20th century data collection techniques are very poorly suited. So infrequent paper surveys designed to document self-reported behavior, you get this thing called courtesy bias, where if you know that I'm asking you about an intervention that you're part of, you tend to give me the answer that I want to hear. And then there's a whole research papers, PhDs, and everything being written on this. How do you actually accurately and ethically collect data on individuals, and how do you know that what they're collecting is true, etc. So what we actually saw at the conference was that there's this big push to use remote sensors to do data collection for monitoring and evaluation. So CIGA, the Center for Effective Global Action, this is their presentation, which is based out of UC Berkeley. And what they've done is using sensors in these fuel-efficient cook stoves that actually monitor the heat output. So over a 24-hour period, or in this case, they're able to do data visualization in Darfur. So what it looks like is that each one of these are areas, and then each of the stoves, and then they can begin to see the outputs on them. And then this is a sensor. They will collect the data from the sensor and give you over a 24-hour period, and therefore a week, they're able to collect the data on how much heat level is being produced by the stove. And so then they're able to compare that to self-reported behavior, when they found out that self-reported behavior was on average almost twice as much as what was being data collected. And so this is all passive. Nobody's gone in there to collect the data. Now we're just using sensors to collect the data on the use of the stove. So that's taking the human aspect out of it in terms of data collection, asking, using technologies. And this is a visualization on that. They're also playing around doing research on using satellite images to predict yields on crops. And this is called a normalized differential vegetation index. Basically, it measures how green the area is. Then you can begin to, well, they're hoping to find out that if they can predict how much yield is. So instead of asking farmers how much they grew, or you wouldn't be able to realistically measure or weigh all the outputs in the large scale area. That's just unrealistic and not cost effective. So they're looking to research ideas on using remote sensing to collect this data. Also, this is another example, measuring residual chlorine use. The intervention here was to chlorine tablets, and then they found that this is the residual chlorine, and then these are self-reported use of the chlorine. So they found that statistically, they are over-recording or giving you courtesy bias in terms of the implementation. So this is beginning to get the question of, how do we measure impact? And so we need to know if the impact is as true as possible. And then, so that's sort of a lot of things we're learning about at this conference. That was pretty cool and pretty groundbreaking. And there was issues of like using drones, using bathrooms, latrines, and then using sensors to measure door activity to see if people are actually using it. Because if you ask anyone if they're using the pit latrines that you built for them, they're most likely going to say yes. And this is to tackle pit latrines, and etc. So, and then something that I'm really interested in is this data visualization, because we spend a lot of time here, and I would like, this is where we spend a lot, like Excel. And this is a sample data of in the Philippines, Bohol Island, I believe. And then this tells you like sum of investments, and then sum of beneficiaries, and the region. And this doesn't really tell us anything at all, right? Like this is just a lot of data that we put somewhere, but then for project directors or managers to make an informed decision, spending a lot of time here doesn't really help. And what the big push is now to visualize this data. And then Esri, the people who make ArcGIS, have actually done a lot of really good work. And this is actually, I just recorded this yesterday. So here, what we can do, we can basically take this ball and we can basically show all the projects in the area, and this is all based on an Excel sheet. Then we can filter projects by active projects. So you say yes, active, and then it pops up all the projects that are yes. And then what we can also do is layer this, I guess, provincial or district data that's available. So this would pop up all the districts as well. So now you're beginning to look at the data in a very different way. You're filtering results, you're looking at it on a map, and then you can even, so this is a project summary of beneficiaries. So now you've created a heat map of beneficiaries. You can see that, this is 85,000 people, sum of number of beneficiaries, and this is all coming from that same Excel sheet. And now if you overlay them on top of a map feature, then you can begin to make really informed decisions, like where are the high concentration of projects, etc., and then or low concentration of beneficiaries that you can begin to target more specifically and inform your decision as a program manager. You can also, so in this case, did I do anything else? Heat map of beneficiaries. And there's also airports that is basically available. And the idea of this Esri platform is that you could publish a map and make it available for someone else. I know they have, like, in Colombia, they have a map of active guerrilla militaries, and then so that you can map that on top of your project and begin to see all the area and begin to make educated choices on it. We can even look, so this is another Excel column that they have, which is foreign staff, and now you can filter by a foreign staff of more than 50. You can see no organization is larger than 50. So if you refilter by, say, 5, then you would pop up these areas. So this is pretty cool current available technologies that we can adopt or should begin to look at in terms of the data that we handle all day, every day. And then that one of the really good things that came out of this conference was this idea of organization guide to ICT4D. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. But the idea is that nonprofit organizations, INGOs, need to start thinking about integrating ICT4D solutions within the organization. And then the CRS being a big, having a lot of resources, they put together a lot of these resources on how to begin that conversation and how to structure the organization to meet those needs. So there's a lot of that information that's really good. And in order to, as I mentioned, mobile technology is a small component of ICT4D, and then as a result, in order to push those resources, you need an organizational support, whether it's money, people, etc. So the question is, like, is PCI a technology company or any organization a technology company? Global, like when I mean technology company, there we go. I mean like Microsoft, Intel, Cisco, HP, Google, Apple. The global development sector, I think, needs to start thinking of itself like a technology company where they produce products and services in a timely manner and bring them to market, as well as measure impact and then have that inform future decisions. And that's the lessons global development organizations need to begin to learn. Whereas a lot of times we're stalling, we're taking too long as organizations to deliver products and services without this agile mobile environment that these tech startups are using. And we're using technology within our projects, obviously, but the idea is that we can make it better. Such as an example was like Walmart. Walmart you wouldn't think it's a technology company, but they have one of the most robust and impressive commodity tracking and inventory tracking system on the planet. Apparently they can, track down to what you bought, like last 5 years at which Walmart, etc., and track all that information. And all that is just using technology to more efficiently do the work that they do. And that we need to start taking lessons from that. And that technology cannot operate in a silo, right? Like it needs to be part of a system. That's a really fancy and beautiful picture of a silo. But the idea is that it needs to be part of a bigger picture. It's a fundamental part of business and strategy and success. And then designing programs and adding technology after the fact is just a little archaic and a little, it's not realistic. We need to begin to build it from the ground up, and that means putting it into a whole process where people, processes, and technologies work hand in hand. Whereas like mobile technology is just the technology part. There's a whole another aspect to this, and I'm sure Jessica's smiling because that's kind of what we're trying to do here, right? Like leveraging knowledge and all that. It's just like, how do we get that? How do we move over here? And then I kept this, I guess, pretty short, but the question is, where do we want to be? Do we want to be on the cutting edge of technology? And then there's also another saying, it's called also known as the bleeding edge of technology, which you could bleed out in resources, et cetera, to adopt new technologies. And we need to decide, this is more rhetorical and hypothetical, where we want to be. Do we want to be adopting newest technologies out there, or do we want to be an organization that is the second mouse that gets the cheese? Or the bird may get the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. We want to use like tried and true technologies that we know. It's one of my favorite sayings because, but yeah, that kind of sums it up in a nutshell. Do you have any questions, like short and sweet? Yes.
So I have a question. There are a ton of organizations globally that are doing app development, system development for ICT4D. So when do we make the decision to buy or build the technology? That's, I think, the first question. How do organizations make that decision? Was that covered at all with the ICT4D conference?
A little bit. So I think yes, but a lot of the conference stuff is more like over large, big picture stuff, obviously. And then that's the idea of this organizational guide, doing analysis on costs, etc. And I think ultimately we need to decide what do we want to do, and then do we want to do software as a service, or do we want to build something from scratch? I mean, the reality is that building something from scratch puts us in this territory, because there's a lot of cost in terms of creating a new product from scratch. Could be it's most like someone like Apple, Google, they have a lot deep pockets that they can push these new technologies that might fail, and they're okay with that. But I think as an organization, that's where having an ICT strategy is really important to look into, where do we want to push our resources? And I think that's a conversation we're constantly having in terms of what technology we want. But if we build a strategy, then we can begin to look at portfolio of services that we can scale up, build an infrastructure to adopt technology. And if something changes, then we can put in new technologies through the existing infrastructure and then make it future-proof. And that's sort of what I would like to see in the future for PCI in terms of mobile technology. Like we're looking at creating a way to adopt new technology, but also to adapt when things, and also move things away from IO level, maybe empower countries and field staff to use these technologies that we have, and provide a training means as well as infrastructure to scale things up eventually. So we'll look at, these are the services we can provide, and this is how you would do it, and then if you want to move forward on, this is the stepping stones that you would take. And having an idea of benchmarking where you want to go is really important for any organization, and that's where we need to begin to look at. But I don't know the answer. I think Jessica was just like, well, how do we know, like, when we begin to buy or build? But the idea is that I think that there are plenty of companies out there that the market is saturated with data collection, for example. Everybody is doing it, and I think this is where, if there's a lot of players in the game, and we're not a tech startup or a firm, we shouldn't be going in and trying to build something from scratch. Like if someone else is providing a service, it might be beneficial to pay it, and then maybe in 3 years they become obsolete, and we would just find another. Maybe someone else comes in, because we cannot realistically compete against certain tech companies to do that. So yeah, I'm more for software as a service kind of guy, like purchasing things versus building things ourselves.
Although we are building do you think?
We are building GPath because there isn't really a service provided for us. Like I mean, there might be for large scale commodity, but not in the sense that what we're doing in terms of commodity tracking, beneficiary registration. That's something that hasn't really, I think we haven't really, not a lot of people are in it because everyone does it differently. Every organization has their own quirks, so we've decided to build our own and adopt it. So that's, yeah, you're right.
I think it was building it on something that already exists. I mean,
But-
adapting it, right?
Yeah.
Like you start from scratch.
Yeah, from GPath, we're not completely building from scratch. I think we are building in a tremendous amount of experience, in National and others have accumulated over time. So, we're kind of adapting and enhancing an existing system to match PCI needs.
Yeah, so Nasmo is the definite, he came from SAVE,
Right.
and they built a system for them similar, and now we're taking that and then, so we're not exactly doing from like ground zero. We're taking that and then looking at what do we need, what do we want, and then building that up. And hopefully we should have something pretty nice. I mean, we already have the architecture is built up, so now we got to work through obviously the growing pains and the kinks, but like it could potentially be really beneficial, and then other organizations could look into it as well or partner up with us.
And my understanding, just one last question, which is related. My understanding is that if we use U.S. government funds to do that development, we can't monetize it for ourselves. And by that I mean, if we're developing or adapting something, and so we're adding value to it, it's not really, the only way it could be an earned income opportunity for us, so we could make money by selling it to others, would be if we use non-USG money. Right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any questions from anyone out there? Or we want to see things more, hear about things more? Yeah. Huh?
Anybody online?
No.
Okay. Knowing, you mentioned a lot of opportunities in mobile, and health and, data collection. There's lots of opportunity out there. Knowing how PCI operates and as well as the mobile technology landscape and trends, what do you think are the key, opportunities for PCI? If you had to say, the top, I don't know, 1 or 3 things, this is a great opportunity for PCI to leverage our strengths as an organization with mobile technology, what would it be?
So, I mean, that's a really, really interesting question. But I think a lot of we collect a lot of data. We are definitely pushing Salesforce integration into a lot of things in different aspects of PCI. And I think there's a lot of potential there for, such as like the LCI as a instrument to measure our programs across, I guess, most of our countries. And the idea is that if we can use it to collect data mobilely and that integrates into a backend database, and then we're able to pull that information and inform decision and see where and benchmark us like almost real time. That's something that we can definitely move towards in terms of piloting and looking. Like in terms of mHealth and etc. That doesn't really, that falls on terms of the project level. Whereas I feel like we need to start investing into a system PCI wide, such as data collection, and then looking at what can we use for that data? How can we use that data to inform continuing decisions or inform the work that we're doing? And I think that's definitely something we as an organization should look into. Is right now we collect data, it kind of sits somewhere in Excel, but then we aren't really doing as much with it as we could. And I think a lot of organizations are feeling that, and I think that this is where we can take an advantage to look ahead and see, how can we leverage that information, whether or not it's making available in a mapping system and then make that accessible to different people in the organization to look at it, to begin to filter organizations and projects that we're doing in a visually appealing way, maybe for donor reporting, etc. I think data visualization is kind of where we should definitely be looking at. I think everyone wants to do that, right? There's Power BI with Microsoft, etc. Tableau to be able to look at data in a whole new way. This whole era of like big data is kind of the thing now, and I think if we're not careful, we could be left behind, or will be. Yeah. Other questions, concerns?
I have another question.
Yeah.
When we're working in the field with mobile data collection for whatever purpose, but we've developed the app or the interface on the phone and what to hit, do we use a kind of a human-centered design approach to develop that human interface, or do we develop it and then teach it to the folks in the field without having that human-centered approach to the design of how the human interacts with it?
So the interesting thing is that when you're building surveys, where are we? Let me see if I can show you. So a lot of these questions such as this, like when you're building it into a mobile device, you actually have to change it to the way an individual would use it. Like a lot of skip logic, etc. Like this, if one or two, what is your primary coping mechanism? So if you put one, then you got to go here. Like this is actually, like paper form is actually a little bit more confusing. If you look at the LCI, for example, it has like step one, and then like if this, then there's like an intense flow chart that requires a lot of education and a lot of training for enumerators, especially if they're not professional enumerator. So whereas when you build it into a digital data collection, you have to build it with a human-centered design aspect of it. You need to look at how users are asking questions. So in that sense, like digital data collection kind of forces you to do that, to focus it on how users interact with it. So yes, like so a lot of times, so we are actually looking to build a curriculum to train PCI staff on how to do data collection, starting with LaRue. Shout out to you. We're building out an actual curriculum because the idea is that a lot of times we build these surveys and questions that look good on paper, but when you put it onto mobile device, it makes no sense. The logic or matrices, how do you build that in there? And that's where we're looking to move towards, so that if we're building surveys, we can build them with that in mind. That how to, and that requires us adopting one, deciding like this is the data collection platform we want to use. There are limitations, but we can accept that. It's within our means or where we want to invest it. So that's kind of the idea.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we can talk all day.
What would be, if you think about the challenges in the field, Tony, with the enumerator, the person who's actually got the phone in hand and is going to collect the data, are there one or two biggest challenges when that device is in the person's hand, and how are we addressing this?
So, I mean, that is interesting. A lot of the issues we run into are, so there's not, the field staff are definitely in charge of like handling, ownership of the devices. If it's for volunteers, how do you give devices or allow volunteers to use a device? What if they break it? What if they lose it? What if they sold it? There's all these like open-ended questions that we need to decide as an organization. I don't know if that's more coming from IO or field staff level, because that's where there's a little disconnect in terms of standard operating procedures for device use. And then there's also like when we're using in the field, what does that really mean if you go into the field and then you go to a community and then they've never seen a smartphone and all of a sudden you're using a tablet to answer questions. Like what does that mean in terms of, there's bigger questions to be asked over there on that end. So I don't think we know the answer yet, and I don't know if any organization really has perfected
So
that.
who's asking those questions and looking into that at PCI?
Yeah.
Sort of that.
So I guess that's like that's sort of in a long-term fact-finding in terms of what we are using, and that's sort of the vision we need to start pushing towards. Like, what are we using for mobile technology, and what are the best practices? And right now we're implementing a lot of projects, but a lot of them are in silos. We need to begin to like bring that in the fold and understand like what is happening. And part of that is building an organizational structure around ICT, not just mobile data collection or mobile technology, but this whole environment ecosystem. And that's whether or not that's the chief architect or whatnot in terms of leveraging resources to be able to go out and train staff sufficiently on the use of technologies as well as etc. Like that's where it begins to move beyond just one person. Yeah, right. And then now we're looking at a whole organizational push towards doing something, and I think that's where we're realizing we need to do.
Thanks.
So the program platforms that you showed on the map, is there one program that we like to feature most so that we can be really impactful or it's easy to share with the public? You know, are we trying to feature that in the story on the website, or just kind of curious, like maybe the work of Asha in India, or
So that's interesting because the reality is that we're not doing anything that's super groundbreaking, and I think that's okay. I think that there's no need for us to be an organization that's using barcode scanners and backpacks with servers that sync information, and that's something like CRS is doing, and they've invested a lot of resources into doing.
that detail might not be that interesting, right? They kind of want to know, end of the day, how it's changing lives. Right?
Exactly.
They don't want to even get lost in the weeds of those.
And then the idea is that I think it'd be interesting to see what happens with the GPath system and then how that comes along. But in terms of data collection, there's a lot of tools out there that we're using, and I think we're getting pretty good at using them. But the idea is that currently we are not at the cutting edge, and that's okay. And I don't think we have the resources to do that because that takes a lot of energy, money, and puts us in the realm of bleeding out. But I don't know quite yet. The Asha one is very informative. The SAP arm using satellite assisted for pastoral grazing could be interesting. But we were working with ministries, right? We're providing the satellite images to the ministry, and that goes out into the pastoralists. And so it's not essentially we're not giving here's a tablet that you can connect to the internet and download the satellite images, and therefore like make informed decision of where you want to take your animals to graze. But the concept, and that's something that's we always want to look at the shiny object, and I don't think that should be the focus at all. Like these shiny objects, they're shiny, but like they aren't making us do things better. Whereas we can use like Comcare is mostly free as a platform, so we use it, and I don't see why we need to move into paying something expensive.
Or we can tell a good story.
Yeah.
Picking up people who can tell a good story with this without confusing people. I'm just thinking of little case studies or things.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Like Magpie, like data collect. We do a lot of data for mobile technology. We do a lot of data collection, and like I don't know how to make that interesting per se.
It's really what you do with the data.
Exactly, it's like what we do with the data. So if we can like begin to institutionalize like these data visualizations and like taking this data that we have and then putting it on a map, and then people can see like, whoa, this is what you're doing, and then like embed like photos and so of the work that we're doing. That's I think will begin to tell the story better than just highlighting one piece of technology that people are using. And I think that's where, in order to do that, it requires investment and was like looking at how we collect data and where we're storing the data. I don't know. Yeah, like it's something like we want to move. I think we should move towards is to be able to get tap into this information that we have. That's just sitting in our common drive, our common drive that we don't know what to do with, or not don't know what to do with. Like how do we use it? So I think that's. Jason came right at the end of the question and answers. But any questions, concerns?
So if you had, maybe not an unlimited budget, but let's say there was a bucket of resources that you could draw on, where would you focus first? Where would you take the money first?
I think we definitely need to start building capacity in our field because a lot of this work is not possible without our field staff,
Right.
whether or not 16 countries, etc. I think that's where we need to begin to actually build ICT at that level. I know we're looking at like gold standard and like looking at bringing like basic infrastructure up, but I think a lot of this technology, I mean, we're not using it here at IO. We need to be using it in the field, and that's where we need to be going to the field, empowering our M&E managers for not just for data collection for M&E, but also for our whether not IT officers or IT individuals in the field, like because in order for this to work, it cannot just be a few people at IO managing
Right.
all, hundreds of people across, and all these projects. I think we need to start pushing, so build capacity, like not to use lack of a better term, that's what we need to do. And I think the field staff will be really interested in learning how to, use technology. I mean, I think that's a really important key that we need to start investing in. Going and building curriculum, going and training individuals, and that way, if something happens in that time zone, we don't need to wait 9 hours before we can handle it.
So what I'm hearing is we need to continue to build our ICT infrastructure in the field, but then we need to build capacity.
Like actual, we build infrastructure now. Okay, these are phones.
What do
This
we
is how
do
you.
with it?
What do we do with it? And then the idea is that you would have specific individuals that are aware of the country environments. Like I can speculate all day about connectivity in Tanzania and research as much as I can on Google, but until someone's there and can tell me like, look, 3G is where it's at, or with edge speeds, we can't do any mobile data collection in terms of in the field and upload it. We need to come up with a strategy to collect the data, go back to the office, and then sync it all out. Like there needs to be a specific strategy, and in order to understand that, we need to train staff up to understand like what are their limitations and what information we're trying to collect. And that, I mean, we need to like map it all out. I think that's kind of where I would put a lot of our resources is in the current human capital that we have. So we don't want to lose people to other organizations or et cetera. If we build it, increase their skill set, then they will likely to stay, I think. I think that covers most of it, unless anyone else out there.
No, thank you, Tony. The only comment I wanted to make is that I think our new strategic plan 2016 to 20 has a huge agenda and using ICT and mobile technology from quality programming for the infrastructure for people. So anyway, I think that it's a great commitment in PCI, so we're really looking forward to make it a huge project, progress in this area. So it's very excited to see it actually highlighted in the new strategic plan as well.
So yeah, it's in the new strategic plan. I just found
yes.
out right
now. Big time. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I need to figure out how to stop this video. My computer is screaming.
What was the answer to the question? Is PCI a technology company?
Yeah, so do we want to be, like,
I don't think it's rhetorical. I think there's an answer to that question. I think it depends on our strategy.
It depends on how you define it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not Google, we're not Apple, we're not app developers, but we can leverage technology
We're
in our operation.
adapters, maybe?
Yeah, adopters or users.
Yeah.
Customers or adapters. So I don't know if we're.
I mean, I came from a development organization that was a technology company. And it would take us years to put in place, I think, the resources required to be that. And even then, it's very hard to realize the gain and make that sustainable. That's what in my experience. Grameen's, technology focus is not yet sustainable, and they've been at it for years and have spent millions of dollars.
It's that organization TerraWorks.
Yeah.
Because they like if you folded out a part of under
Right,
the
but then they had to fold up their microfinance open source system called Mipos because they couldn't make it sustainable.